Hopefully you all can hear me fine. If you can't, feel free to leave a message for Marcy, and Marcy will relay the message over to me. So my name is Anson. If you've attended a webinar in the past before, I've delivered a few of them. But if not, just a quick kind of intro in my background. I was formerly a program manager at Microsoft. I was on the InfoPath team. My area of expertise while I was there was controls and a lot of filtering and server client parity as well. So that's kind of my area of expertise, although I am definitely I consider myself an expert in InfoPath in general, but controls are definitely kind of my little domain there. So so that's kind of like my quick background. So today we're going to be talking about simple techniques to control permissions for InfoPath forms. So we have a lot to get to, so we'll just dive right in. Here's a quick webinar agenda. We'll go through some quick talk about permissions and components to do with permissions. We have lots of demos to go through. Hopefully we'll get through all of them, but if not, we might do a part 2. And I will reserve some room at the very end of the demos to do some Q&A. So feel free to go and post your questions on the Q&A tab over there. I'll try and get to them as soon as I can, but I'll definitely stick around at the very end for a few minutes to answer your questions if you have them. So permissions. So in terms of permissions, there are pretty much 2 sets of permissions that we're going to be talking about today. They're very different. So the first one are SharePoint permissions. Very useful. They come out of the box with SharePoint. You can have owners, you can have visitors, you can have read-only access, you can have contributors, and so forth. And largely, you can basically inherit permissions from your site collection. You can specify them at the site level. You can even specify them at the item level as well. However, while SharePoint permissions are great, they are fairly difficult to use within InfoPath forms. User roles, you might hear about user roles quite a bit. User roles can be used in the client for InfoPath, but on the browser they are not supported. So there are some kind of workarounds for that, and one large workaround here is Active Directory. So there's a bunch of Active Directory tools that you can use to basically help you create a permissions model within the forms. So we'll talk about that right now. So a bunch of useful components that are useful for you in order to kind of use permissions to leverage your InfoPath forms. The first one is the user profile web service. So SharePoint has this web service that comes out of the box that returns Active Directory information to the form. So you can return stuff like display name, your manager, your title, your phone number, your location, your office, and so forth. There's a bunch of there's a whole list out there and of items that you can return using the user profile web service. So this is super useful data that you can pull into your form, not just for permissions use. You can actually go and pull in data if you wanted to, pull in data from a particular person. If you want to use workflow to assign something to a manager, that's another useful use for the user profile web service. The second one that I'm a big fan of is our own Active Directory web service. We call it ADWS. It basically takes the user profile web service and expands on that. Adds additional functionality such as getting employees for a particular manager. You can return groups for a particular user that they belong to. You can find users by alias. You can find users by name. You can check if a particular person is a member of a certain group. So that's fairly easy to do. So there's a bunch of stuff that you could do with the Active Directory web service. So, and that's what I'll largely be using in my demo to kind of demo what you can do with the Active Directory with permissions in InfoPath. The other components that are fairly important are workflow components. So SharePoint Designer, or SPD, is a very good tool in order to help you change permissions for a particular document or list item. We'll definitely need to use impersonation steps for those, so I have a quick demo on that as well to show you how to set up permissions using impersonation steps. And workflow variables are definitely useful when you're trying to pass around variables from form to form, or even the document to the workflow itself. And the second one that I'm a big fan of as well is form-based workflows. So rather than having SharePoint Designer manage all of your workflow, you can actually keep all of the kind of workflow variables, workflow information inside the form itself and let the form manage the workflow. We have a workflow approval template part, or XDP. I'm going to show that real quick, hopefully, if we have time, and kind of go through that, how that works. And one of the big advantages of having a form-based workflow is it'll help you maintain status and your variables within the form itself. So there's not a lot of passing around the variables from workflow to form and back to the workflow, because basically the entire workflow is managed within the form itself. All right, so that was kind of my quick discussion about permissions and components. I have kind of a grab bag of demos here, so I have a few demos that I'm going to be showing you. Hopefully we'll get to all of them, but if not, we will kind of set up a part 2, and that way we can dive into some of the demos in a little bit more detail. So the first one we're going to talk about is setting up a default print view to make it not authorized, and we're going to associate some print views with some admins. The second demo, we're going to show a simple SPD workflow to remove permissions after you submit the form. And I have another demo that kind of combines these last points on my on this slide. So basically, we're going to have a document library form, and here we're going to go and add an admin view with an XDP for approvals. We're going to switch your views based on status at load time. We're going to try to send an email notification through a browser-based form when you actually approve the form to let the creator know that the form was approved. And then finally, we're going to move the form to a separate archive folder when using an SPD workflow. All right, so now time to get to the demos. All right, so I'm going to be kind of putting on different hats as I'm going through the demos. I have 2 users here. I have a Joe user, and I have myself. So Joe user is your typical person within your organization. That's the person that is going to go and contribute all of your list items and so forth to your SharePoint site. When I put on my hat as Anson, I'm the admin, so I'm going to be the approver. I'm going to be the one that manages, the workflows. I'm generally the one that's actually creating all of the forms as well. So, so the very first one, what we're going to do here is we're going to go as Joe user, create an item in this list. So this is the one, so this is just kind of quickly to start off. This is the demo where we're going to be setting the default print view to not authorize, and we're going to associate print views and admin views. So here I just have a very basic InfoPath form. So I'm just going to go fill out the title, short description, and we're going to go ahead and save the form. Okay, great. So I added my item here. So if I go ahead and I try to open up the item again as Joe user, it says here you are not authorized to view this form. So this is because as Joe user, I submit the form, great, but then I don't want Joe user to go and actually view the form afterwards. I don't want him to go and edit the form. So I'm just going to throw up this: you are not authorized to view this form view for him after he submits. So switching hats now, I'm going to be Anson as the approver. So let me refresh this list and see I have the new item that Joe user created. So if I click on my item, because I am an admin, I get this special admin view, and I can go ahead and I can edit the form if I wanted to. So that's kind of the quick how that demo works. I will show you what is going on behind the scenes. So for those of you that don't know, in SharePoint 2010, for pretty much any list, you can customize the form. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to customize the form in InfoPath. So here's InfoPath. So I have several views in this form. So you saw 3 of the views. I have your regular edit view. I have my admin view that I myself as an approver can see. And I also have the print view here. This is the one that Joe user sees after he submits the form. So for list forms in particular, what's super interesting, if I go back to my edit item, for those of you that don't know, this is actually a super useful tool that you can use. If you go to the properties here, you'll see there's a print settings tab. So when you're editing the form, you'll have this edit item default view that's going to be shown. But what a lot of people actually don't know is that the print view is also going to be used as the display view when you view an item in your SharePoint list. So if you create a separate view, suppose you wanted to create some sort of summary view, different than the view that you're actually going to be using to actually put in data, to actually edit the data or create a new item. If you want to create a separate view, then you do that in InfoPath, and then make sure that you set the print view for that particular view, the default view, for example, as your print view. So this is what I did here. And then that way, that'll just designate the print view to be the default view whenever that item gets open. So that's how I set up that. All that's doing is that it's saying the default print view, which is this "you are not authorized to view the form," is going to be open whenever I'm viewing that edit item form. So the next thing I want to do is show you the data connections I set up here to the ADWS. So I have my data connections here. Let's open that up. So I have two main connections here. I have my get my info. So this is connecting to our Qdabra web service AD user info. And there's a bunch of operations here, and what I'm using is get my info. And that's pretty much it. So I'm automatically retrieving the data when it gets open. And what that does, if I go to my advanced view of my fields, go to get my info, and let's go ahead and drop this on the form, preview it. So it's returning these key value pairs. So here I have, my name, my last name, my title, and a bunch of more information for me that's pulling from AD. So I can go and actually query this. I can filter it. Say if I want to get my account name, I just need to filter, get my SAM account name. If I wanted my manager, I can just use the key manager to grab the value there as well. So let's get my info. The second one is user member of group. And this is a little bit, this is using the same web service. And basically the difference here is that there are two parameters that it receives or that it takes. There's a username, so I'm just specifying a default value right now just so I can query for the schema, and a group alias. So what I did here, so those are the two data connections. So what I did here in the form load, this kind of has all of the rules that are going to be run when the form is loaded. So there's two main rules here. The first thing I do is I query my user groups. And the first thing I do here is also set the username to my value of my key value pair that I had in my get my info. So all I'm doing here is I'm grabbing the value of SAM account name using a filter. And then the second thing is you can have different groups specified in your organization. We just happen to have one called core, so I'm just using that as an example here. And I specified core as my query field for group alias. And then lastly, all I need to do is just query my data connection. So I'll show you what the schema looks like if I expand query fields. Again, here my username and group alias. And then finally for my data fields, all it returns is one field is user member of group results, and that's just a Boolean, so it'll return true or false. And then finally for my last rule, I'm going to change the view if I am an admin. So if I check if that value is equal to true, then I just switch the view to admin view. So that's pretty much it in terms of the setup of this form. Hopefully that was fairly simple. But basically to recap, using the default print view to show a not authorized view, then I set up some form load rules to query a couple of data connections. So I have to get my info, that'll grab my account name. You can potentially also use the username function within InfoPath as well. But if you need more information, get my info will definitely get you more information. And then finally, we basically check whether or not that person is in a particular group. And if they are, then we go and change the view to the admin view. So that's the first demo. And we're doing good on time, so we'll get to the second demo. So actually, we're going to switch back to Joe user here. And we're going to go to the second demo. So the second demo, so I'm going to show you how to create a simple SPD workflow to remove permissions when submitted. So here, as Joe user, I'm going to go ahead and add a new item. Add a title. We'll go ahead and save that. Okay, so let's see if the workflow runs. So here we go. So this is my workflow that I called remove permissions. You see that the workflow is in progress, so I can click on this to see what's going on. So it's queued right now, so it's just going to take a little bit to let it go. So hopefully it's done now. There we go, so it's completed. So now still as Joe user, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and click on this item that I just created, and I can view it. That's great, but then notice that I cannot edit the item. This is grayed out, and that's because the permissions that I have to this item are removed. I only have view only permissions. So if I switch hats again, I go back to myself. I am the one that actually can approve it, or I can view the form. So let's refresh my list. So you see here, there's the item that I just created. If I click on it now, you can see that I actually do have edit permissions, so I can actually go in and I can actually edit the item. So that's pretty much it. That's a fairly kind of simple concept, and to do this, we're going to go to SharePoint Designer. So I have my SharePoint Designer pointed to that particular server. You can see all the lists that I have here. So my list was Demo 2, so we'll go ahead and open that up. You see here under Workflows, I have one workflow associated to this list. I called it Remove Permissions. So I can go and click on that. Let's go ahead and edit the workflow. Show you what I did here. So all I did here was just one quick step here. There's an impersonation step, and it's important for to use this as an impersonation step because you cannot actually change permissions unless you use impersonation steps. So that's important to do. It's right up here if you want to add an impersonation step. And all I really did here was add one item or one action. So I can kind of show you how this works. So go to Actions here. And there's a bunch of list actions. I used replace list item permissions. You can probably use remove if you wanted to. So if you add the action, it'll look like this. And all you really need to do now here is specify these two parameters. So you want to go and replace the permissions. I gave it view only. And you have to choose which users you want to grant permissions to. And I used the user who created the current item. So in this case, it would be Joe user. And lastly, you want to pick which list you wanted to, or which item you wanted to affect. So there's a bunch that you can pick here, but I just wanted to affect the current item that Joe user created. So that's what this action says: replace view only of item for the particular item for the current item. So that's how you create the impersonation step. The last thing you need to do is you need to specify the start options. Allow this workflow to be manually started is usually checked off by default. You can keep that there. I chose to uncheck it. But the important thing in my demo especially is that I want this checked. I want to start the workflow automatically when the item is created. So I made sure that that was checked off, and then that means that whenever I create the item, then the workflow is just going to start automatically. I don't have to go and manually start the workflow. There's also other options here. You can start a workflow when the item is changed. That'll start another workflow as well. So that may be particularly useful in other scenarios. All right, so that was demo number 2. So we only have a few minutes left. So let me kind of preview demo number 3, and probably won't be able to get through the end of the explanation of it, but I can show you what the demo is. Perhaps as a little bit of a tease, and then hopefully we can probably in a future webinar cover how to actually kind of behind the scenes for this demo. So this demo is basically creating a approval workflow. So I'm using a document library this time instead of a list. This is going to be a forms-based workflow, and this is using our workflow approval XTP. So again, the scenario is I am Joe user here. I want to go and create a request of some sort. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to go and open up the request form. Great. So let's go and add a title and description. Okay, and then I'll just add a note. Perfect. So that's it. That's my request. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to submit my form. So notice that it doesn't appear here. What I did differently here is that when I hit the submit button, it's going to be submitted to a separate list or separate library. So I have here demo 3 submitted libraries, so that's where it got submitted. So you can see here, there's my user. This is the time that I submitted it. If I open it, this is as Joe user again. I can see, okay, great. You know, my form is awaiting approval, and I can see the description of my form here. If I switch hats as myself, if I go to my demo 3 submitted library, and I open this up, instead of seeing that other view, I see a separate view. I see my admin view because I'm the approver. It's assigned to me for approval. So I can go and say, okay, you can have it. And I can go ahead and I can approve his request. Great. So when I approve his request, it'll actually go and again submit a separate document to another folder or another library called demo 3 approved. So you can see here, it just got created. So if I go back to Joe user and go back to the approved library and open this up, here it says, oh, your form has been approved. And behind the scenes, you know, you could have an email being sent to Joe user saying, oh, you know, the approver has approved your request, so then they can be notified, and then they can go in and they can view the details if there are any details in this particular list. So that's the third demo. So I'm out of time, unfortunately, so I'm going to have to hold off on actually showing how that demo works. But if you are interested, we will be probably doing a part 2 of this webinar, and I can show you how all that is set up. All right, so let's go back to my slides. So that's pretty much it in terms of what I had to say in terms of the demos and everything. So if there are any questions, I see there are already a few questions in the Q&A tab. Feel free to go and add in your questions. I will be here, Marcy will be here for a few more minutes to answer any of your questions you might have. So thanks for watching, thanks for coming, and hope to see you very soon again shortly. And hopefully we'll do a part 2 in either next week or the week after. Thanks, everybody.